Alright, this video is going to go over some SSH config changes we need to make. Number 4, number 6. Number 4, all users must log in using SSH with key-based authentication, and password authentication must be disabled. And number 6, the root user must not be able to log in directly with SSH. So for number 4, we need to generate some SSH keys and configure them and get them where they need to be. So you need to be connected to the VPN, SSH into your system as your regular user, and log in. So SSH uses public key, can use public key, private key authentication. So we're going to generate a key pair, and then we're going to configure our system to use those keys. The command to generate a key pair, ssh-keygen-t RSA. Enter a file to save the key, just hit enter to take the default location. Enter a passphrase, empty for no passphrase. You want to put a passphrase on there because if you don't put a passphrase, if somebody steals your key, they could impersonate you. You're like, well, who might steal my key? Well, if there are a bunch of different administrators on your system, then one of them could steal your key. All right, your buddy is mad at you, so he steals your key, logs in as you, and then does bad things and gets you fired. That could not happen if your key is encrypted. So again, that was a command, ssh-keygen-t RSA. It's going to ask for the file. Just hit enter, and then it wants you to enter a passphrase. It's not going to show the characters, and then enter the passphrase again. And then it says your file was saved. So if we go into the .ssh directory and look at what we have an ID RSA and an ID RSA.pub. So ID RSA is your private key. RSA.pub is your public key. So in order to use the keys for SSH, we need the public key to be in a specific file in this location. So we need to make a copy of the public key, and it needs to be in a file called authorized keys. So we have a file called authorized keys. Another thing about SSH key-based authentication, you need to set it so that nobody else has permission to your key. So chmod minus go group other minus read for authorized keys. We also need to make sure the SSH directory itself is only accessible by you. So this command says show me the permissions of the directory, current directory. So the .ssh directory key permissions are correct. The key permissions are correct. So that takes care of the config that we need to do on the system. The other thing we need to do is we need to get your private key down to whatever system you're connecting from. I'm connecting from Windows command prompt right now to demonstrate this because this is what most students use for the class. So this Windows command prompt is on my Windows system. We need to get my private key into my .ssh directory. So I'm going to run an scp command to do that. So scp, I want to log in as my user at my IP address. And I want to get the file .ssh/id_RSA. And I want to copy that file into my .ssh directory. So this command is going to copy that key down to my .ssh directory. So I put my password in, and that copied my key down. So now theoretically, if I SSH up as my regular user, it should work, but it didn't. If you see what it says there, it says, oh, it is required that your private key files are not accessible by others. This private key will be ignored. So this is a somewhat new behavior for Windows. So you need to go find your key. So if you go to your C, users, pick your username, go into your .ssh directory, find your ID _RSA, right click on it, go to properties, and we want to click on not advanced security, edit the permissions. Basically, you want to remove permissions for everybody but you. I hate Windows. There we go. Advanced. I thought I clicked advanced. So we want advanced. We want to change the permissions. No. Disable inheritance. This is why I don't teach the Windows. Remove all inherited permissions. This is why I don't teach the Windows class. So we wanted to disable inheritance. Let me cancel this so I make sure you see what to do. Click advanced. Disable inheritance. Remove all inherited permissions. And then we want to add a permission. Select, put your username for your system, hit check names, hit OK, and then you want to have read and execute should be good. So apply, OK, OK. So now in theory, it should work. So there we go. So now it's using my key, put in the key passphrase you selected, and that should work. So if you are using a Mac or Linux, the SCP command will be a little different. No, actually, if you're using a Mac or Linux, that SCP command will be fine. So if you're using a Mac or Linux, you can run the same SCP command to get the key down. So I'm on CNT serve right now. So on CNT serve, I still can't SSH with the key because I don't have the key on CNT serve. So what you need to do now is you need to copy, if you want to be able to SSH from CNT serve, you need to SCP the key to CNT serve. So the command for that, you want to copy the file .ssh / ID _ RSA to your user at cntserve.hack.edu, and you want to put it in the .ssh directory. So that's the command that will copy your key to CNT serve. I'm not actually going to run that command because it will overwrite a key I already have on CNT serve that I don't want to overwrite. But you should run this command to copy the key up. So that will get your keys to work. The next thing we want to do is disable root login. So I'm going to go back to my system and become root. Right, and the SSH config files are in etc SSH. If we look, we have an sshd config, and we have an sshd config.d, and we also have an ssh config and an ssh config.d. So ssh config is used for the client when you ssh to something. SSHD config is used for the server when people SSH to you. So we want to look at the SSHD config. And two things we need to change in here. We'll do it in two separate changes. One, we need to disable root login, and we also need to disable passwords. So we look at this file. There's a permit root login, and if we look, the setting is grayed out, is commented out, which means this is the default setting, and it says prohibit password. So that means root will be allowed to log in with keys, but we don't really want that either. So we're going to make a change to that. We're going to make a change to that to change this to no. So I like to leave the commented line in there so that I can know what the default setting was. And I'm going to change that to no. And then we're going to restart SSHD. And theoretically, we should not be able to log in with SSH anymore as root. Let's test that. Still let me log in. So yeah, there, if we look at the SSH deconfig, there's this include statement that says include any files in this directory that end in .conf. So if we get out of there, if we look in the sshd config.d directory, there's a file called permit root login. So essentially, that file is overriding what we just looked at in the sshd config. So we're going to delete that file. Uh, so we're going to delete that file. Yes, we're going to remove that file. So now if we restart sshd and go try to log in as root again, it's not letting me, even though I'm typing the right password, it's not letting me log in. So that correctly implemented that. So the next change we want to make is to disable passwords. So the line for that, is password authentication equal yes. We want to change this to no. If your keys are not working, what do I mean by if your keys are not working? If when you try to log in with your regular user, if when you try to log in with a regular user, if you do not get this, or if when you type your key in, it does not work, do not do this step. You will lock yourself out of your system. You need to figure out why your keys are not working and fix it before you do this. My key is working, so I'm going to go ahead and make the change. So again, I copied the line, I changed it, and now I need to restart SSHD. So now if I try to log in, if I put my key correctly, it still works. If I don't know my key, it will try a password, but it's not allowed to try a password. So now I can't log in without my key. So that took care of that. Again, at this point, if you put your key, you can log in as your regular user. If you try to log in as root, it's going to ask you for your key, but you didn't configure root to use your key. So even if you put your passphrase, it's not going to accept it. And then if you don't put your passphrase, it's not going to work. So right now, if you have locked yourself out, there'll be another video. There's video or comments in the support system to show you how to fix that. So go check that if you need to.